living La Vida low carb. This show is changing lives. We talking about your diet, trying to get you feeling right. Cut up them avocados, fry some eggs, time to explore the longest running health podcast, hosted by Jimmy Moore. Time to give up the crappy garbage, we're getting into ketosis. Every day is a new step to your goal, yeah, you're getting closer. Motivated and focused, don't stop, just go. Time to get inspiration from the Living La Vida Low Carb Show. Hey, the livinglowcarbshow.com.
So guys, today I am so excited. That right there is Melissa Baldwin. Go check her out. She is Redeemed Carnivore on Instagram. And she's one of the people that when I put out that big casting call a couple months ago now, I'm like, do you want to come on the podcast? Be interesting, go. What you got? And you sent me your story and I was like, wow, girl, you have been through some stuff. And I've had a lot of people on like this lately. And what's funny about this, Melissa, welcome, by the way. What's funny about this is when I put out that call, so many people had stories of trauma, had stories of abuse of alcohol, drugs, you name it. So it's kind of cool. And then how nutrition helped bring them back. So welcome. And tell us a little bit about who you are before we get into your story.
My childhood was kind of similar to yours because I've watched some of your story, and I grew up with an alcoholic father, and he's narcissist, which, you know, quite a few of the alcoholics are narcissists. My mom, in fact, passed away 3 years ago today, and she was just trying to keep the peace in the house, you know, and I'm an only child, so, you know, it was like I was the scapegoat slash counselor for my mom, and, you know, looking back on it now, it's kind of helped me because that's what I do is I try to help people, you know, with my YouTube channel and with the Instagram. But, you know, it's like when you grow up in an alcoholic household, it's you either run to it or you run away from it. I ran to it. Because that's what I saw. And
you mean when you became an adult, you ran to alcohol because that's what you knew? Right.
Actually, it started when I was a child because the story that I got told all the time, and it was supposed to be a funny story, but now looking back on it, I'm going, that's really not funny. But Daddy said, well, when I'd sit my beer can down, you were crawling around and you'd crawl over and drink it, and we thought it was funny. I look back on that now going, and I used to laugh about it.
You got addicted, right? Is that what you're insinuating?
I did. And as I got older, I started smoking because both parents smoked. I was 8, 9 years old, sneaking around smoking the butts of a cigarette in the car. You know, and I got caught, but nothing was ever done to me. So as a teenager, that's what I did. You know, I remember whenever I was young that we lived out in the country, and Daddy would always keep his bottle of whiskey in the deep freeze. Okay, so they went to town because he wanted some more whiskey. And so I was left home by myself, you know. What did I do? I went into that exactly. Mama even had wine in the refrigerator, and I sneaked it, you know, and now I look back on it and going, oh my word. You know, so it continued. It really did.
And it's funny how it started so innocuous. Oh, isn't it cute? The baby is drinking from the beer can when we're not paying attention. Ha, ha, ha. And now, many years later, you're looking at it and going, Yeah, you should have been a parent. You should have stopped it, because then I wouldn't have had a craving to go sneak into the deep freezer to get the whiskey, the JD, I assume, and not get the wine. And you probably filled it up with maybe
Right.
some water so it didn't look like it was so far down. Like, I don't know. I mean,
No, no, no. I just drank. I didn't even think about that.
well, and I've heard from other people that they said when they used to sneak it, they would like fill it back up with water to try to see if it wasn't noticeable. Yeah, it's
I should have done that.
what?
I said I should have
It's
done that.
well, it doesn't sound like your parents gave a crap about anything you were doing. So it's amazing what we will rationalize to do based on addiction and what that addiction will drive us to do. And even in my world of carbohydrate restriction, you know, people, they say, well, I'm not addicted to carbs or I'm not addicted to sugar. And I'm like, all right, give it up for 30 days. Give it up. If you're not addicted, you won't have withdrawals. Well, guess what happens? They all get withdrawals.
You know, whenever my addiction was alcohol, but then it went on to
Yeah.
food because I quit drinking. I saw years later, whenever I was married and had a child, I saw what I was doing, and I'm like, okay, God, I can't do this. You can. You're going to have to take it away from me. Well, the cigarettes, yes, absolutely. I put them down and said, I'm done. The alcohol, on the other hand, was different because I just flipped. I went from alcohol to sugar, which is basically the same
Yes.
thing. And I tell people that I'm like, sugar and alcohol is the same thing. Number one, it's the same thing that's going on in
Yes.
your
Same.
brain. You know, it's
Yes.
firing the
Same
pathway.
addiction
Yes.
pathway. You know, but people excuse sugar because, well, it's just food. It's just food, Melissa. Like, you can't vilify it like you do alcohol because alcohol inebriates you and you can't get behind the wheel. You eat sugar, you could get behind the wheel. So what's the big deal?
You know, it's went through a program, and it's where I got my new boots, and so I went to them and said, "Hey, I'm a sugar addict." They laughed at me and they said, "Look, we deal with people with heroin and cocaine and alcohol. Says we ain't got time for you." Okay, well the wife, she kind of listened to me and she, you know, had a one-on-one with me, and she told her husband, who was saying, you know, look, I don't have time for a sugar addict if you're just craving chocolate cake, you know. And she says, dude, this is real. It's like heroin, like, you know, a fix. And, you know, he's like, what? He'd never heard of it before. So it's all these kind of stereotypes that are like, oh, well, this is not real, or we'll just eat less of it.
Yeah, and that's, look, you tell an addict to eat less of, tell an addict to alcohol, just drink less. Tell someone who's addicted to cigarettes, just smoke
Right.
less. Tell someone addicted to crack cocaine, just have a little less. What does that do? It stokes the addiction even more because you're not fully fulfilling that addictive property in your head. And so having just a taste of it, this is why when people go keto, I often say, cut off sugar, just cut it completely off,
Yes.
or you're going to keep feeding into that beast. You know, people hear, well, I'm allowed 20 grams, so I'm going to have 20 grams worth of Snicker bar. I'm like, okay, well, number one, you can find better ways to use your carbohydrates than that, but it's because people miss that hit. And the beautiful part of, and you know this, and you're going to tell your story about this, but the beautiful part of kind of getting unaddicted, as you have with alcohol and then later your sugar, is you find there's a new freedom that you didn't know you had before. And I know you're going to get into that, but talk a little more about the alcohol. When did it kind of reach its apex and you needed to break it? And then same with the sugar addiction. When did you realize it was such a problem? I assume it maybe showed up in weight and health issues. Tell that part of the story.
It did. It also, more than the weight and the health issues with the alcohol, it was the relationship because it got to the point to where I was fixing to lose my marriage. I was fixing to
Yeah.
lose my child. And it's like, when they say, well, there is no rock bottom. Well, yes, there is. Everybody has their own
Yes.
rock bottom. And I hit mine. And it's like God showed me two pathways, and he said, now you go this way, this is how you're going to end up. You go this way, and this is how it's going to end up. It's your
Yeah.
choice. And I was like, I don't want to lose
Oh,
what I've got. You know, I went into the relationship with my husband with baggage, and everybody has baggage, but it was like, I need to do better. I don't want my child to be in the same situation that I
yeah.
grew up in. And she did somewhat, and I've we've made amends with that, and I've, done all that. But then it just kind of became a thing of to where I went to the sugar. So emotionally and, in the head, I still had the same issues to deal with. Whereas with the alcohol, I didn't have the physical,
How old is your daughter now?
She
So
is
she's
31.
31 years old. I'm trying to encourage you with this, so stick with me. So did she ever get addicted to alcohol in any way?
No, I mean, she did drink, but she's a mom of three. And so, she's just like, I don't have the desire for it. And I was like, thank you, Lord. I was so
There it is.
glad.
You, as her mom, broke the curse because you were cursed as a child. Your parents didn't give a crap that you became an alcoholic. How old was it when you had the beer? Like 4 or 5 years old? 3, 4, 5?
No, I was
Oh,
crawling
wow,
around
like
when I
2 years old,
started.
under 2 years old. Wow. Well,
Yeah.
you broke that, and I want you to celebrate that. I'm sure you have thought about that, but like I think about it even today with my own trauma that, well, I don't have any kids, but like my dad beat the crap out of me and berated me, and I wouldn't imagine doing that to any kid today, mine or anybody else's. Well, anybody else's I'd go to jail, but mine, if I had any, it wouldn't even be on the radar screen anymore. So I know I would break my kind of curse and trauma. um, by the way, how's your relationship with your parents now, knowing all the things that kind of led you down a deep, dark path?
Um, well, me and my mom, before she passed away, we did kind of, somewhat
Yeah.
reconcile. There's, I'm, hey, I'll be the first to say I'm still in
Yeah.
therapy, and you know what? I think therapy is
Yes.
awesome when you find the right
Yes.
person that, I think if you have an issue and you think therapy can help, by all means,
Well,
please
look, I
go.
think they get a lot of bad raps. There's a lot of kind of negative. Oh, you're
Oh,
going to
yeah.
see a shrink, huh? What's wrong with you, you crazy person? It's like, no, let that stigma of therapy go. I went through the pretty bad trauma, and I didn't really deal with it until 2 years ago, when kind of things came to head and things came out in my story that were different than the narrative I grew up with, and so I needed somebody to help me. All right, help me think through this. So I
Right.
and the funny part is, and let me know if this is your story. Once you have some trauma like you did as a kid, and then it led you to the alcohol abuse and then the sugar abuse, sugar addiction. Do you see that trauma just feeds into trauma, feeds in, and like you feel like you're in this endless cycle of, I can't break this.
Yes, yes, I do, and that's another reason why that I went to therapy is because she is giving me the tools that I never got as a child to handle day to day things. We all have different issues that we deal with on a daily basis. We all have the record player in our brain going, "You're not good enough. You can't do
You
this."
telling on yourself when you said record player instead of like DVD.
Oh yeah,
Record player. Okay,
yeah.
it's like, tell me you're older without telling me you're older. Record player. Boom.
Real Good Foods is one of the fastest growing frozen food companies in the U.S. Everything they make is nutrient dense, high in protein, low in carbs, and made from real food ingredients. They make food for every occasion: breakfast sandwiches, poppers, enchiladas, entrees, and pizza. So whether you're on a keto diet, trying to cut back on your carbs, or just trying to eat healthier, they make super convenient and tasty options. RealGoodFoods.com and @RealGoodFoods on social media.
Yeah, instead of the MP3 player or the, CD or whatever, but we all have that thing that plays in our mind constantly is you're not good enough, which as a child, that's what I may not have been physically told that like out of their mouth, but they might as well just came right out and said, you're never good enough. You're not going to be able to do
their
anything.
ambivalence towards you, Melissa, showed they didn't care that you weren't into them, that you were not valued by them. So their actions spoke much louder than if they said any blunt words.
Right. And, then that's what you feel as a person. That's what you think. It's like, oh, I'm never good enough. Just like, for instance, and I'm just, this interview or my YouTube channel, I'm sitting here shrinking going, I can't do this. I can't do this. And I'm just like, no, I'm going to stop that because I want my grandkids to see, hey, Grammy got over this. Grammy, look what she did. Look what Grammy taught us. Like you said earlier about the generational curse, I want to break that. I want to break that even with my grandchildren. I mean, because my dad is still living. In fact, he lives with us. And that's another reason why I went to therapy is because I'm basically having to take care of him. And that's difficult. Not gonna lie. There's a lot of things that he has changed. He quit drinking, but it's still the mental part still there. I saw a thing on YouTube or Instagram, and it said, the ones that are in therapy are not really the ones that need to be in therapy because they're not the ones that caused you to be in therapy.
Yeah. I think often, Melissa, like my dad was my perpetrator in my trauma. And like the thought of him going to therapy, he's too prideful. He's too narcissistic. And quite frankly, at this point at his age, he's probably not all mentally there anymore to even like process what he did. And I think part of what helped me process my own trauma was knowing the trauma he went through. His dad was an alcoholic. His dad was physically abusive and mentally berating, saying really ugly things towards him. And so that's what he learned. That's what he said, okay, that's how you grow up kids. And so he knew the alcohol was bad. He became a cop, and then he only beat me and berated me. He didn't drink alcohol. So have you ever looked at or talked to your dad about, I know the relationship is strained, but have you ever looked at how was he treated maybe as a child that may have passed down the trauma to you?
I get little glimpses every once in a while and little snippets that he'll say. And I do know that my granny, his mother, was an alcoholic. And she had a lot of issues. She was very abusive to my grandpa. My dad was the youngest of 3 boys, so he was the baby. So anything he wanted, anything, he did no wrong, to whereas that went with me as, since I was the grandchild, I did no wrong. I was allowed to do whatever.
So the apple didn't fall far from the tree is what I'm hearing, and that he just picked up their habits, no consequences to any, like in a way, I'm kind of glad, no, I'm not, but I'm kind of glad I got beat, because then I realized consequences, but then it wasn't for bad action. It was just for no reason at all. So instead of getting beat, you were just, it was just ambivalence that your dad went through. And so he passed that down to you. Oh, haha, you're 1.5 years old. You're drinking my beer. Let's make a joke about that.
Right, right. And, even now he thinks that he should not suffer any consequences or that, yeah, or everything, should revolve around him. And, then it's like, well, typical narcissist, well, it's my fault because something happened, or, well, you shouldn't have done that, or whatever. And, you know, you get that still every single day, and it's tough. It really is tough. And you have to go somewhere in your brain and you have to go, okay, no, this is not my problem, and I need to set boundaries.
Yes, the boundaries is so big. Like it's gotten so bad with me, Melissa. I haven't talked to my dad in 2.5 years. Like he's not interested in my life. I'm not really interested in his life. Like it's sad because
Right.
I would like it, but in order for me to have a relationship with him, my boundary is acknowledge you beat the shit out of me. Acknowledge you berated me. Acknowledge that I had fear of you for a very long time after I left, and I did. And then that was just a process and no longer look over my shoulder and be scared. Then it was another 15 years after that, which was 2 years ago, to just kind of come to terms with what the hell happened. Why am I at this point in my life? And these are the things we're not allowed to talk out loud. I remember when I came back from sabbatical last
No.
May or March last year, I started talking about my trauma. And my dad calls my mom and says, our son's lying about me on the internets. And my mom just told him to go, where, and hung up on him. But like, it's amazing the let's sweep it under the rug because the family name is more important than the truth.
Oh, I so remember that, because as a child, I didn't have friends over because, I never knew what kind of mood. We never knew. It's like,
For me, I never had a girlfriend for that reason. I was refusing to bring home any girl, and I had a few offers, but I refused because I didn't want them to be exposed to him. And God knows, like every time
right.
I was around a girl I kind of liked, he would like embarrass me. And it's like, I'm not going to bring a girl home
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah, I had one best friend in school, and she came over. Of course, her household was almost the same way, so she kind of
Yeah.
understood. But I wasn't allowed to go out. I wasn't allowed to have friends over. I wasn't allowed to have phone calls. We walked around on
Yes.
eggshells, and it was like you sit there and freeze until I got, and I'm real good at reading people
Yes.
now because I can
Yes.
read. I can
And
tell. It's like, yes, yes, and you just sit there and you don't say anything, and you're going, that's helped in my career somewhat, but
what's your career?
well, it was
Oh,
caregiving,
yeah.
but since I had to stay home, with
Yes, I can
dad.
see like families in a store, like a grocery store, and if the mom or the dad is upset at the kids, I can literally see it in their eyes because I'm used to seeing when things are kind of cool and when things are not cool at all, and there's just kind of this glare that's going on. Something's
Yeah, and you can read the
yes.
kids
You can
too,
tell if the kids are
because
terrified or if they're happy. I was going to the chiropractor yesterday, I believe it was, and this really nice lady came in with her 2 or 3 year old girl, and the girl was just so happy and climbing all over things. I was like, that is one happy kid. They're taking care of her at home.
right, right. But as we grow older, we kind of look back on these things and we kind of question, why did I go through
Yes,
that? Why, why
yes,
me? We had the why me, and I did that for a while, and here recently, I've learned, okay, my story is not like anybody else's. My story is unique, so I can tell my story, and I could possibly help somebody with my story. I don't know exactly what you went through, because I'm not you. but we have similar things, so I can say, okay, yes, I
Yes.
understand. Or here's what happened to me. And, I was like, okay, maybe that's what I'm supposed to do. Maybe that's what I'm supposed to do is
Yeah.
help people with the, my therapist not too long ago, she said, eating disorder. And I just kind of went, wait, no, you mean addiction. And then I asked my husband, and he's like, well, why can't it be both? And I'm just like, oh, yeah. Well, why
Tell
can't
me
it?
how it manifests as an eating disorder.
Well, right now, and I have been 1 year, no sugar, no carbs, no nothing. That's how I got my boots. But you know, it's still I still obsess over foods. Because I'm like strict carnivore. I have a lot of foods that I can't eat because of allergies. But it's like, okay, I look at these foods going, okay, these are safe foods. These are not safe foods. And I am even doing it to my grandkids, which I want them to be healthy because they're on the standard American diet, and I want them to be healthy, but at the same time, I'm kind of like micro managing, like, oh, you can't eat that, or oh,
Yeah. It
that's gone past like the addiction into an eating
All right.
disorder.
So, I mean, it's so hard, especially when you've made a change and then you've got grandkids who are on a far different diet than you eat. And so you want to help impart good nutrition on them, but when they get home, your daughter and her husband are feeding them a different way, so you're kind of defeating the purpose. I suppose you could teach a little bit along the way of, if you want to be powerful and strong, you want to eat protein, and
Right.
protein is the way you kind of build the muscle and you get strong and you get smart and blah blah blah, and kind of set those kind of images. But you're only asking for conflict with your daughter if you try to force maybe some of those things on them. Not that I'm saying that you are, but I know some parents that do kind of go keto or carnivore and they go overboard, grandparents, and trying to indoctrinate their grandkids of, hell, off the
Right,
sugar,
right.
that's bad. So there is no like good or bad in that context unless you have those conversations with your daughter.
Well, and with my mom, she had high blood pressure. She was diabetic. And she had health problems. She was also, allergic to peanut butter, but she sneak around and eat peanut butter. And the way we would know is she would scratch
Yeah.
her head because she would break
Yes.
out. And I kept telling her, I said, Mama, I said, don't you want to be around for your grandkids to see them graduate? And it got into a screaming match to where she looked at me and said, it's my
Yeah.
body. And I was just like, oh, yeah, you're right. It is.
Look, as much as we want to save our loved ones, they ultimately do make their choices. And your mom made choices that unfortunately 3 years ago killed her. And my brother,
It did.
what's it been, 13 years since he passed away at the age of 41 from morbid obesity, heart disease, diabetes. And he knew about I had lost weight on the Atkins diet just 3 years prior to that, 4 years prior to that. And so he had tried low carb and had done it and da da da, but he started feeling good and he's like, okay, I'm all better. I can go back to eating the way I ate before. And it was just so sad, especially when it's family and you see them and you love them and you care about them and you want them to kind of find the success that you did, and then they go down and choose their own path. Like, we can't take that personally.
Right. And, I think that that's what I did because, I was trying my best because that's how I show people that I care is by doing for
Yes.
them. course, I'm also a people pleaser and all like that, but I'm working on that one.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
But
I'm sorry. Forgive me for asking, but how old are you?
I am
Girl,
49.
you're my age. Listen,
Yes.
we don't give a fuck about what anybody.
The older I get, the more I'm just like, because you start to wonder, do they
Yeah,
like me? What? And I'm
no,
just like, do I like them?
no. I have long not cared. Uh, I'm going to impart that
I'm
today.
learning.
You don't care.
I'm learning. But that's how I show people
Yeah.
that I care is by doing for
Yes.
them. And so I would cook low carb for mom because it would also help her diabetes. It would lower her
Yes.
sugar. And she would have to take less medicine. And, but then she would sneak around and go eat whatever the kids were eating or eat the peanut butter or whatever. Well, so she basically used food as comfort.
Yes. And
And
she was.
so that's she was, and she was not at the point to where she wanted help. And I was trying to push it. You
No.
can't do that. You can't push people to want help, just like sending them to a treatment facility. If they're not willing to receive the help, if they're not willing to say, hey, I have a problem, you're wasting your time.
I talk to a lot of my fellow keto coaches and people out there, and that's the first thing they say is, are you committed to this? Like, you're going to be spending money with me. I can't do this for you. You really have to do it. But if they get the buy-in factor from them that, yes, I'm motivated, I want to do it, I want to do this, and I will do what you say, blah, 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 then they see client success. It's the ones that kind of go, yeah, just tell me what to do. And they just kind of half-ass it. They're not going to do it. And that's what happened like with your mom, but your mom's not unique. There's a lot of people that, well, I just don't care. And then look what happened. They die prematurely.
Have you experienced the dreaded keto flu? Did you know that most of these symptoms are actually due to your body dumping excess electrolytes? This is where Element comes in. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything you need and nothing you don't. That means lots of salt with no sugar. Element is formulated to help anyone with their electrolyte needs and is perfectly suited to folks following a keto, low carb, or paleo diet. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio, 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium, with none of the junk, no sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. Everyone needs electrolytes, especially those on low-carb diets, or if you practice intermittent or extended fasting, if you're physically active, or sweat a lot. Add Element today and see how much better you feel and perform. Use the URL drinklmnt.com/Jimmy.
Right. And, and then, that also brings up another thing with the rest of the family, because we're left holding the pieces. Just like this month is Suicide Prevention Month, okay? When people commit suicide, what they don't understand is, well, you have the family that is trying to pick up the pieces, okay? They're trying to learn how to move on. That's what I had to learn with my mom, because not saying she committed suicide, but in one way,
Slow.
She didn't care.
Slow suicide. Like, I think people are addicted and they don't get their sugar consumption under control, and they already have diabetes and high blood pressure and high blood sugar and hyperinsulinemia. That is literally killing yourself, just albeit slower than other ways.
Right. And, that's what I had to deal with. When I was in that program, before I got my boots, I was almost 1 year in, and I just said, F it. I don't care anymore, because my goal at that time was those boots. it was not, you know, I couldn't see past the boots. I couldn't see, okay, lifelong
Yeah.
commitment.
You've mentioned the boots a few times. What is that?
The program that I was in was called New Boots. And if you completed the program and you're sober for a year, you got a pair of new boots.
Because
and
you mentioned the boots at the beginning, and I was like, okay, is that like an acronym? BOOTS? And then, like you said it several times, I'm like, okay, you got to tell the story what the boots are. So 1 year sober, you get free boots. Go.
I did. I got a pair of boots. I got to go pick them out myself. And on my YouTube channel, I do the story of my boots, and I show my boots. But you know, that was my end goal at that time. Well, that's just a short little goal. You know, it's like, okay, why are you really doing this? And so I just kind of spiraled out of control. It was to the point to where I was, yes, that's me. To the point to where I was standing in front of the pantry just eating, and I'm eating to the point to where I was literally sick at my stomach. And I was looking to see, you know, is anybody, you know, I mean, we're doing this in secret, like an addict, like a pure addict. And, you know, it got to the point to where I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I'll tell a story, and this is kind of a disgusting, down rock bottom story. The caregiving that I was doing was for an elderly lady. And, of course, she ate whatever she wanted to and whatever. It got to the point to where that, and I share this on my YouTube channel as well, and I said, y'all, I'm going to be very transparent because this is absolutely disgusting, but I want people to understand that this is a real addiction. She would get done with her plate, and she would have food left on her plate that was maybe sweet or whatever. I would eat it out of the trash can.
Yeah.
Now, and I say that out loud, and that makes me literally sick at my stomach to think about that I was like that.
Yeah.
But it just really got to the point to where I'm like, I physically and mentally cannot do this anymore. Either I'm going to get help or I'm going to go to a facility.
Yes.
It's because I can't do this anymore.
What you're underscoring here is that power of that addiction. Like, I think people, they underestimate that pull to make you do things that would just be utterly repulsive, like eating food out of a garbage can or half-eaten food. Like, it's, and I've done that, by the way,
yeah.
And a lot of people watching this right now and listening to it, they've done it too. Like, look, addiction makes you do things that you wouldn't even consciously do. But because you're so addicted, you got to get that hit. And if you don't get the hit,
yes,
you do anything to get the hit.
Yes. You know, and even to the point to where it makes you physically sick. Like throwing up and then going back and continuing to just still eat.
And it's all the mind convincing you that if you don't, then.
Right. Absolutely. You know, and that is what is so freeing about, say, like a carnivore diet, because you're eating just meat, or you're eating meat and eggs, or you know, whatever carnivore you eat. Because a lot of times people that are addicted to sugar, they're not moderators. They can't just have one and leave it alone. That was my goal there for a while, is, well, I want to be normal. Okay, I'm first of all, I'm not normal. Second of all, you're either an abstainer or a moderator. There's no in between. I'm an abstainer.
Same.
One, you know, it's like an alcoholic. You can't just have one beer and leave it alone.
Don't drink in my
You're gonna
Doesn't
have
work.
to
You
have
can't moderation.
no, no. So why do we ask uh, people who are addicted to carbs and sugar? Why do we ask them? Oh, we'll just eat less and move more.
I still come back to the notion that sugar and other kind of carby foods, they are viewed as food and not as an addictive substance. Whereas drugs, alcohol, you name what the addiction is. Oh, well, those have obvious kind of effects that can impact your health, and smoking. Whereas it's just food, and they're not looking at the down effects of that addiction being obesity, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and let's face it, insulin resistance. Like there was this came out 3 years
Yes.
ago that showed 88% of Americans deal with some spectrum of the insulin resistance. 88%. That's 9 out of 10 people. That's like everybody. And so very rare people
Yeah.
that aren't going to have this issue, and everybody else needs to probably cut down on their amount of sugar and carbs. And yet there's no judgment, other than if you're online and you're in a keto group, then there might be a little bit of judgment. But from general society, no.
Yeah. And then general society, whenever you're keto or carnivore or whatever, they look at you like you've got
Right.
two heads.
So you're judged
You
if
know,
you're in the community, you're judged if you're out of the community. So people, they fall back to their addictive pathway, and they're happy.
right.
I'm happy.
And
At least people aren't judging me when I have sugar, and I stay away from the keto boards when I'm eating it.
right, right. And also is whenever I was in the, pantry eating and whatever, I also would distance myself from people, because you're
Shame.
hiding. Yes, yes, because you don't want to be, have your finger pointed and be saying, oh, well, look at you, you messed up
Yes.
again, which goes back to the childhood of, well, you're no good.
And the fact that you hide means subconsciously, at least, it's wrong. Subconsciously, you're
Yes.
choosing a path that is less than the best. Like think about,
Right.
well, I'll even tell, I was going to say, think about your kid, but I'll tell you, even my animals, they know when they do wrong. I've got cats over in my other building, and the one cat likes to get up on the couch. She's not allowed on the couch. But when I'm out of there, like I'm over here now, she's probably on the couch. And as soon as I walk in, she looks at me, plops down, because she knows it's wrong. Isn't it? Like,
Right.
because then you take action that shows whereas you're hiding when you're having the sugar, you're hiding because it's wrong.
Right, right. And of course now, and one of my things is I love to bake, which is weird because I love to bake and I'm a sugar addict, and people are like, well, don't you try it? I said, no, I don't. Because I look at it and I look at the bigger
Yes.
picture. It's consequences, because yes, for that moment that will taste great. But let's look at the big picture of, you're going to have the cravings again. You're going to have the night sweats. You're going to have the bad mood. You don't feel good. You feel like poo, and you don't want to exercise and do all that thing. Why would I do that? Why would I subject myself to that? To whereas before it was, well, I'll just have a little.
Yeah. And
No, you don't just have one.
yes. And I actually have quite a few people who follow me, Melissa, who are keto or carnivore, and they're like bakers for a profession. So they like make cakes, wedding cakes, and that. I'm like, how do you do that? Like, I would want to at least have a little of the icing and put it in my mouth. And plus, you got to taste like quality. They'll have like their husband or something taste it for them. Does this taste good? Okay, good. Oh, but
Yeah.
it's amazing to me how you can be around that. And even people that work in restaurants where they have to be around all kinds of foods. Like as a carnivore person, that would be torturous. I guess if you still liked that stuff, but there does come a point, it sounds like you might be there now, although you still kind of have a little bit of the struggle. But there does come a point when you eat carnivore, which has been 1 year, you said, about 1 year you've been doing it, that craving goes away. Like, we get to have bacon. We get to have like really luscious tasting food. In fact, at the farmer's market a couple weeks ago, I found, you're going to drool a little bit, I found some pork belly bacon. And so it came as this big slab. I got another one in there I'm probably going to eat when I break my fast. But I'll slice it really thick. And yeah, I know, you're slobbering all over yourself. And man, I just put it in there, cooked it like bacon, had to churn it over a little bit because it's really thick cut. But it was like this luscious, delicious pork belly. And it's like, if you can't get satisfied with something like that, because it's palatable and delicious and legal on carnivore, there's no hope for you at that point. It doesn't come quick, but eventually you go, hey, I got pork belly, I got bacon, I got steak and eggs. You can have all the crappy garbage you want.
Keto Chow is a customizable shake mix that is also perfect for cooking and baking, giving you simple, nutritionally perfect meal options. Keto Chow. Make keto easy. Discover your favorite flavor at jimmylovesketochow.com.
Right, and you know, that's when you have to turn your mind to say, I get to have, instead of, well, I can only have. It's all in the mindset. You know, it's like, okay, for me, give me a grilled hamburger patty. Oh, man. Or either some grilled bison, ground bison, or turkey, or... Oh.
It's Texas barbecue brisket for me. Every time I go to Austin or elsewhere in Texas, first place I stop is into a barbecue joint to get some brisket. So,
you know, but it's like, everybody's like, well, that sounds boring. I'm like,
look, I think what carnivore does, and it does brilliantly, is it teaches you that food is fuel. Now, I know we like to eat for pleasure. There's lots of reasons why people eat, and I've had people talk about emotional eating recently. I've had other people talk about they just like the way they feel when they have blah, blah, blah food. But look, at the end of the day, what is food supposed to serve in our body? Fuel. That's it. And so when you have protein from animal-based foods, you get all the fuel you need as long as you're eating enough. Don't skimp. If you eat carnivore, don't skimp. You've got to eat enough so that when you do go periods of time without eating, aka fasting, it's not a big deal because you're very well nourished. Right.
You know, and that comes back to the eating disorder, because, you know, you're talking about eating enough. Well, recently I had been walking, and I've got a 1/4 of a mile long driveway. So in the morning I would walk, and I would do 10,000 steps in the morning. And, you know, it just got to where it was this thing, but it was taxing my body because, number one, I was not eating enough. You know, there's a lot of people on Instagram that I do follow that are like, you need to eat this amount. And I'm just like, well, that's a lot. I'll gain weight, you know, and because I'm trying to lose some more weight. I have lost a small horse is what I'd like to say. I have lost that over about 5 years, and I've kept it off, but some of it has crept back up from, you know, eating sugar again and then having to get back. So I'm kind of getting back, but I was not eating enough because I was scared to eat.
Look, we have been taught that. Look, culturally, we have been taught that when you overeat, that's why you gain weight. And so it's all predicated on calories and overconsumption of food. That's why our portion sizes need to be small. Think about it this way, you guys. Everything that we've been told, do the opposite. So it's not that you should gorge yourself with food, but instead of portion controlling and calorie cutting, just eat to satiety and let your body tell you. Now, there is a little bit of kind of a regulation pathway, and especially when you've had addiction in the past like you have, you want to get that under control. But the best way to control sugar addiction, by the way, is fat and protein and getting it from animal foods. Because look, and even in my book, Keto Clarity, we talked about this. When you start getting the cravings for sugar and carbs, stick a big old thing of fat and protein in your mouth and watch it go away. It's so magical, Melissa, that you don't really crave those things anymore. What your body's craving is nutrients, not the carbohydrate. It's just desperately seeking a hit, but in a good way. And they know the fastest way to get a dopamine hit, for example, is to eat carbohydrates, but you can get a dopamine hit having pork belly.
You know, a friend of mine and we have been talking about this because we've been doing the protein sparing modified fast by Marie Emmerich. And, you know, I had been doing that for a while and I've had some success, but then all of a sudden my body started saying, you know what, we're going through too much. We're stressed. We are stressed by all the walking we're doing every 5 days a week, you know, and I think just that, and we're not getting enough. And I was telling her, in fact, in a text this morning, you know, she was talking to me about it, and she said that she was really having a problem with that. And I said, look, I stopped fasting. Number one, I stopped fasting because it was not helping me. It was not the right time. I quit walking that much, you know, because that was too much cardio. And I quit with the protein-sparing modified fasting. I'm eating more fat and still no carbs, but I'm eating more protein and more fat. And I said, I'm eating 2 and 3 times a day. You know, I'm tracking somewhat, but it's not like I was doing. And I said, the 2 pounds I did gain with taxing my body, I lost.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm craving, for the last 2 or 3 days, I've been eating salmon and seafood because that's what I've been craving. Well, that's the omega-3s. And my body's like, hey, we need some omega-3s.
Yeah.
We need some good
Grass-fed
fat.
beef will give you that same omega-3 as well. Has as much omega-3 as salmon does. So,
yeah. So, you know, it's like I'm like you. Whenever, you know, you've had some of your issues with your sabbatical that you've been doing, you listen to your body.
Oh,
and that's what I have to.
If I needed a break, it's like I ain't pushing myself today because I can barely move. So, like I think where we're trying to get to is intuitive living. Like when you've done this a while and you're 1 year in, I'm 17 years in. Like your goal should be, I just want to be so intuitive, listening to my body always, and then adjusting appropriately. I think that's our goal. But what we do is we get distracted by this voice over here, this voice over here. I read this on the internet. I read that on the internet. Dr. So-and-so said this. Dr. So-and-so said that. And we're just so drawn in by all those things. And I think at the end of the day, we know best. Our body's sending signals all the time. You're no longer in your trauma. You're beyond that now. You're no longer addicted. And you're working on your trauma, by the way, with the therapist. That's wonderful. No longer addicted, even though you still have those pulls of the addictive pathways in your brain. Carnivore is healing all that, my dear. And you're well on your way.
It is. And it's amazing how that, you know, instead of, well, take this pill or take this shot or whatever, eat this food, you know, right. You know, it's like eat meat and eggs and, you know, as I hear some of the other ones say, eat the meat you can afford and what your body craves. And, you know, if you can have the grass-fed, grass-finished beef every single day, that is more power to you. If you can only afford the ground beef that comes from Kroger, by all means.
I'm all in on that philosophy. I'm very blessed. I have a nice farmer's market that has affordable meats. And look, the fun part about carnivore is you're no longer buying soda and snacks. And even if you did keto, You're no longer buying like the keto snacks and all these things. You're just eating meat and eggs. And I've got chickens for eggs. I spend all my budget on food, basically on animal foods. And so, yes, it's $8 a pound for grass-fed, grass-finished, but to me, it's worth it because I can have a pound of that with some cream cheese and some spices and salt and a little heavy cream and maybe some mozzarella cheese. And I've got beef stroganoff. And it's like, it's so easy.
You've got to feed.
Yes. And I'll eat that big ass meal and then not eat again for 16 hours.
Right. See, and that's where I was restricting my body by not eating enough, is because my body was going, hey, we're still hungry. We still need nutrients. And I'm just like, okay, you know what? We fixing to eat until we are satisfied. I've gone to eating twice a day now instead of 3 times a day. You know, isn't it wonderful how our bodies are made if we just listen to them and pay attention to them?
Yes. Well, you're certainly doing all of that. I'm so grateful. You told your story about overcoming trauma, drinking beer less than 2 years old, then getting addicted to alcohol, then recovering from that, but then getting addicted to sugar before you found carnivore, and now you're off to the races. Guys, go check out Melissa Redeemed Carnivore over on Instagram, and I assume you're Redeemed Carnivore on YouTube?
Yes, I am. And I also have redeemedcarnivore7@gmail.com. If anybody would like to email me, I am open to whomever, you know, we can have a discussion.
So Redeemed Carnivore and the number 7@gmail.com. Yes. If you want to talk to her, ask her questions, or encourage her. I would definitely encourage people to reach out to you. Exactly. But Melissa, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. I have certainly enjoyed it, and I am certainly enjoying your conversations with you and Brittany with all of the, because it sounds like that's a lot of what we talked about today as well, and I'm learning quite a bit. And your sabbatical, I am too excited for, and I'm going to be following you in the next 50 days that you encourage everybody to do. I'll be there.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Get inspiration from the Living La Vida Low Carb Show. Hey, the livinglowcarbshow.com.
Woo! You tired of playing the mask game? Me too. That's why I wanted to tell you about the Unmask. This is a breathable, completely breathable. It covers, you can't even see that it's breathable, but it's breathable. Whether you're going on a plane, having to go into a store and wearing this thing, playthemaskgame.com is how you can get this mask. They come in all kinds of colors and everything. In fact, right there, you can see right through it what it is, but when you're wearing it, it does not look like it's anything different, but it's breathable, baby. Playthemaskgame.com.